Hello, KCIW listeners, and welcome to Curry Cafe, where we put together a panel of volunteers and guests who discuss various topics from whimsical and fun to more serious subjects.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Curry Cafe. Sadly, that Rick's voice you just heard there is recorded. Rick has decided to take a sabbatical, and we'll be back in a few weeks. We really miss him. Does a lot of the heavy lifting around here. We have a couple of interesting things to talk about today, but before I get started on that, let's go around the table and have everybody introduce themselves.
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you. My name is Billy Ruth Hopkins Furuichi, and I'm a host here on KCIW of my own show called Angelita's Wings. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, hi. Yeah, hi, and this is Troy Leah, Crescent City's LGBTQ plus representative. And I'm also glad to be here. Sorry we're going to miss Rick, though.
Yeah.
I'm Robert O'Sullivan. I live in Brookings. I used to teach high school and used to be a pastor at the same time in the Bay Area, Oakland.
Awesome.
Oh, terrific. Yeah.
We have a really good crew here today. Everybody we've dealt with before, and they seem to be very knowledgeable about everything. It seems like everybody is tired of talking about the federal situation and want to talk more about local issues, and we will get to that in just a couple of minutes. But before we do that, I want to reintroduce my Lie of the Week segment. I started that several weeks ago, where I would say, pick out Trump's favorite lie or my favorite lie, and it turned out it was just impossible. I could not find a favorite one. There are just so many of them. The one that pissed me off more than anything that he told this week, and I'm sure anybody who's a veteran for the military or even knows anything about the military or about our wars our country have been in, is when he compared the Medal of Freedom, which is given to somebody who does a politician a favor. Rush Limbaugh, as an example, got the Medal of Freedom. He said it's just like the Medal of Honor, except you don't have to get all shot up and everything. I could have punched the television. This man has no idea. That in order to win the Medal of Honor, you have to not only risk your life very gravely, but you have to save others. It's just, so that's a little different than the Medal of Freedom.
Just a little.
Yeah. Another one that he's been touting quite a bit this week is that you can send little Billy off to school and say, I love you, Billy, have a nice day, and blah, 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 blah. And when little Billy comes home, little Billy is a girl.
Oh, I'm already a girl, Rick.
She's had a sex change operation while at school.
Yeah, right.
Without the parents' knowledge or permission. Now, when I went to school, we used to go every year to the Museum of Natural History in New York, and I had to have a permission slip from my mother to get on that bus and go there. I guess you probably would need that, but while you're at the museum, they could do a sex change operation without the permission. I don't know. That was one of his lies. Let's see. I got more here. I don't know.
Can I comment on that one? That one's crazy.
That one's so crazy.
They're all crazy.
Well, they're all crazy.
They're all crazy.
I mean, honestly, he's just gaslighting his base.
Oh, and then for some reason or other, he was doing a town hall this week, and 10 minutes or so into it, he decided to channel Dick Clark and played 39 minutes of music that he did his wonderful dances to. No explanation as to why, no connection to anything he was doing. That's just what he did.
And he played the Village People.
That
was what?
Does he realize that that YMCA is a gay anthem?
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't know anything.
How about in the Navy? The Navy was just this. Jesus. Anyway, let's see what else I have here. I think this occurred yesterday. Now here we have a man running for president of the United States, and he's giving a speech, or he's had some kind of a thing, and for some reason or other, he brings up Arnold Palmer. And for some reason or other, he seems to know that Arnold Palmer was very well endowed. And because of that, he was a real man. Arnold Palmer was what on earth does that have to do with anything? Arnold Palmer doesn't have anything to do with anything in the election. He's dead. And what's the difference whether or not he was what Trump considers to be
and how would Trump know that?
Because anything compared to him is big, apparently.
All the guys that come out of the showers would say,
I see.
Okay, that's the mentality of the guy who...
Can I respond to a couple of things?
Yeah, I had another note here. Oh, that's it. I would like to give a shout-out. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this or not, but there's a new show on CNN that's being hosted by Roy Wood Jr. You may remember him from The Daily Show. And it's called Have I Got News for You? And it's on must be Saturday night at 8 or 9 or something like that. You can look it up on the schedule, but that's on CNN. Very funny.
Awesome. Now, being a military brat myself, that first one that you were talking about, the honor, Medal of Honor, it's just so laughable. What would you know anything about?
Yeah.
What it takes to be in the military, what commitment, I mean, what sacrifice. It's just ridiculous. And the boy-girl thing is, he's just trying to downgrade everybody. He wants to make sure everybody's less than him, I guess. Women, LGBTQ, the military. Just, is there anybody he doesn't offend? And who's going to vote for him if he offends everybody?
I don't know.
Does
any of this stuff make sense to anybody around the table as far as...
But even when he offends his base, they don't get it.
They don't care.
They just laugh.
He takes their money, and you heard about that? A gentleman donated $5 to him, but if you don't check at the very bottom, this little bitty box, they drained his bank account, his life savings, and this person's still going to vote for him. He took all your what. I'm sure there's people out there that want to put their 2 cents in, and if you do want to do that, our number is 541-661-4098. Give us a little text and let us know what you're thinking, because this is just asinine.
Thank you for reminding me of it.
No problem.
I get so excited about this.
You get riled.
Little boys coming home as little girls, so yeah. Never mind.
We'll
see. We have some technical...
I could check the texts if you want me to. I can.
That's done on the special phone.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Do we have the phone?
Tom?
Well, if we don't check the texts, I hope we get some other opinions at the table. We haven't heard from Robert.
Okay. I want to talk about a local election that is hardly an election at all. So much so that the League of Women Voters, that you would think would be interested in hearing what candidates for an office might say, decided they didn't even have to appear at their events because they had no opposition.
Uh-oh.
And what is especially offensive to me about that fact is that the current city council in Brookings is made up of 4 people who were appointed and only 1 who was elected. And 3 of those who were appointed was really as a result of a banana republic, banana coast coup d'etat. The losers of the recall election last year, if you don't remember, conspired with existing members on the council to, in effect, decide that they should choose their own successors. Sore losers winning. That's election disturbance of the worst sort.
Yeah.
I did not realize that.
And I was hoping that strong candidates would run against them. No one chose to. I tried to encourage some people. There are problems of who lives within the city limits and who doesn't, and that sort of thing. But I had thought at least at the city council at least at the League of Women Voters meeting, I could ask them some questions, especially about the debacle at regarding St. Tim's.
Right.
Right now, we know that a good over $625,000 of taxpayers' money is going to pay for the folly of the council in ignoring religious liberty stuff and being scofflaws and assuming that since this is a banana belt, that Banana Republic type ethics apply rather than the Constitution of the United States, Constitution of Oregon, and a very on-point federal statute called the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, which specifically said that if you're going to mess with people's religious beliefs, you have to have a compelling state interest that cannot be reached by any other means. This passed both houses of Congress unanimously in the year 2000, and yet, with all that being known by the council, with a federal judge ruling against the council, they still voted unanimously to try to fine St. Tim's $720 a day until they drop some undefined social services.
Is there any recourse?
On that particular thing, when the whole matter of paying for the legal fees of the election took place, St. Tim's negotiated that finally would be dropped. Mm-hmm. But all five of these people said that something so obviously ridiculous should go on, and even after the court had ruled against them on the question of whether they can control churches' feeding programs, how often they could feed, and all that. The federal judge called that an ill-conceived ordinance, and yet here these clowns who accepted that are getting a free ride, even from the League of Women Voters. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, who's appointed them?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, who appoints them?
What happened, there was a recall.
Right.
So when they had the recall, when it was obvious that the recall was going to go through, two of them quit.
Okay.
All right. Now that left the third one, which left a quorum, right? And the quorum then was allowed to do that. Am I remembering correctly?
You're close. It's not exactly that way, but essentially, there's a long period between when an election happens, even though the results were out the night of the election, and when it is officially certified. It's like 45 days.
Oh, right.
And during that time period, the sore losers chose to negotiate with the two people remaining on the council to let one of them resign before he was officially removed by recall, and then he was replaced on the council, and then they replaced two others. So rather than have a post-recall election, which everyone expected, the losers got to choose their successors. That's really outrageous.
So the reason the recall took place was our city manager was caught by Fred Meyer stealing stuff. She had stuff in her car, and she was charged with a misdemeanor, which was then reduced to a violation of blah, blah.
Right.
This went on for months and months and months. The whole community is up in arms. She's also been involved in similar things. Another job she had.
7 months of paid administrative leave,
right, among
other things.
After committing a crime.
After committing.
Yeah, and she, what was her salary? Something like $150 a year.
Wow.
It was way up there. It was way more than a governor. I remember that. So you would think, okay, you got caught like this, red-handed, and this and that. Come in and try in some way to be somewhat contrite.
Or
exactly the opposite. Exactly
run out of town with a tail between your legs.
They would just, and the mayor, for some reason or other, unknown, although rumored, backed her 1,000% and just kept arguing and arguing about how she has to keep her job and she's the only one that can do it and blah, 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 blah. And it was just, it was, we were in
None of that makes any sense. It's like there's like an inner core of crazy.
Yes.
This was quite some time ago, wasn't it? I remember voting in that.
It was a year and a half ago or so.
Yeah.
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 Oh, well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies, I
Yeah.
guess.
But to not be able to ask them to explain themselves or apologize.
Well, she did apologize, remember?
I'm talking about the St. Tim's thing.
I was,
Right.
I was back on
Or
top,
apologize even how they got their seats. I mean, one of them is a wife of a civics teacher, and she also voted against the First Amendment, in essence, on continuing to harass this church because it was serving the poor so effectively.
Okay, now most of these city council members are just regular folks. Work at the hardware store, this and that, and they're not lawyers, and they're not like somebody that might be in the Senate. But don't they have advisors telling them that isn't there a lawyer, city lawyer, that tells them
There
they can do this,
is
can't
a
do that?
city lawyer, and the city lawyer gets paid whether she gives good advice or not.
And I'm sorry. So, Robert, do you go to these meetings on a regular basis?
No, I did go a number of times and testified on the St. Tim's Banner.
Do you think that's a good idea to ask the public to attend city council meetings so that we know what's happening and have a voice for our community?
You ain't got no voice.
Well,
It sounds like it.
When I first moved here about 6-7 years ago, there was an incident that made me want to go to a city council meeting, even though I don't live in the city. So I mentioned that to somebody who's lived here for a while, and they said, "Well, you can go, but you're wasting your time. Whatever you want to talk about, their mind is made up, and we will not change it." And then I had a couple of reasons to go, and I was shocked at how just stonewalling common sense they were, and it was literally a waste of time to go and testify.
They are viewable on television
Yeah.
and on YouTube after they happen. And
well, that's after the fact.
well, it can be watched live in certain facilities. I'm not sure what. It might be a certain cable company or so. And it might be live on YouTube as well.
I think it is, because
Yeah.
I've talked to people who said, yeah, I watched it on television tonight.
But can you have input if you're watching on YouTube?
No.
I mean, the whole idea is if we want to have input, we have to physically be there in a seat and get up and make a statement.
Well, they're not going to listen and make change.
Go ahead, Troy.
Who else can you, what's above them? Who else can you go that's above them that might have some kind of sense to do something about it? You should have that power to do it, right?
Well, I'm thinking, though, simply by seeding the consciousness of the listeners with some reality and some truth. It's valuable to have a voice for reason put out there.
We don't have a lot of ways that news is disseminated in this. Did I say that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
In this town, the newspaper might have a column or two about the city.
Yeah, ours
meetings,
in Crescent City, it's just pretty much the same.
We are in the process of putting together a real newsroom with a real news reporter, and that will do regular broadcasts about things like that. Right now, we have shows like this or some others that might discuss what was going on, but if you're not listening to KCIW, you don't get that.
Wow.
I've been to, let's see, 3 incidents, maybe 4, where people were literally lined up in the parking lot to speak. The room was full
Really?
immediately, and people were lined up to come in and speak, and it was like they weren't even there. And at one particular incident, and I can't even remember what that incident was about, but we had a woman who was frequently a panelist here, very learned, very well-spoken person, who was giving her opinion about it. I think it might have been something to do with St. Tim's, but I don't know. And she wasn't. We got people that are up there and they just ramble on and boring and not knowing anything, but this is a very well-informed person. And as she's speaking, the mayor is not even looking up at her. He's scribbling on something on his on his desk like Jon Stewart used to at the beginning
Right.
of the Daily Show. And finally, she said, "You're not even looking at me. You're not listening to me at all, are you?" And then she went on, and he continued scribbling. But after a while, he did look up. But I mean, in other words, I don't care what you have to say.
Yeah, what the situation I assume it's the law or the way the council's organized. They allow people to speak up to 5 minutes, basically on any subject. Well, in a number of cases, I did this regarding the St. Tim's thing, and I even had someone who caught an angle of the current mayor while I was speaking, just plain not paying attention, looking at a phone or wiggling around and what have you. And it's when they don't have any accountability, when they don't have opponents running against them. And if the League of Women Voters won't even have them be there for questions so that people can ask them, why are you in this office to begin with, and things like that.
For money, apparently, because that's all they have
There's
to do
no
is
money.
just collect their check.
They don't. It's for volunteer, no pay.
Yeah.
Oh, so these appointed people are not getting paid,
No, they can
but they can
like
make-
charge for travel and things like that from mileage and that. But from what I understand, none of them do.
So they just get power. Is that it?
Well,
On this
the
council?
city council, yeah, and they have done some outrageous things.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Crescent City had an incident with the firework incident this last year, where that child was hospitalized, and there was that huge explosion, and it was terrible. Really, really, a lot of people got hurt, and there just wasn't a lot done about it. I mean, it's like, who has to die and more people have to be injured for the council to do anything there too? It's really interesting.
It's for their own self-interest, and whatever particular projects or platforms they want to push, they will be allowed to push them, especially if we don't insinuate our own voices into the community, which, I don't know, I'm 80 years old. I probably won't go to any of these meetings, but I really think some people ought to start.
One thing I did, and this was, in essence, the council. I'm Christian and was background as a minister, but I didn't relate to any congregation around here, including St. Tim's. And I went to the Unitarians more often than anywhere else. But anyway, when I got interested in what was happening, the council, in essence, evangelized me to become a member of St. Tim's. And I tried to figure out, given the media void here, the pilot should be called the pilotless. That
Still is.
how do I communicate on this? And I found two basic places. One, a website called progressivechristianity.org, where I have writings on many subjects, and the other being YouTube. And I have on my own YouTube channel, I have about 15 items on St. Tim's. And if anybody wants to see that person not listening to me or other issues related to that's where they can find it.
Go ahead.
I only know a little bit about St. Tim's. I volunteered there once to serve food for the hungry, and I do that for the holidays because I'm Jewish, and that's what my family does. We don't do this gift thing or whatever. Obviously, we go and help those in need because that's what it should be really about. Those that have less. So I go and volunteer and feed the homeless or whatever, and they were great as far as the experience. And then I left. But that's just terrible to hear that they're being harassed or
the city council and I think maybe the city population in general is not very kind to the homeless here, and
because they're stigmatized. And
the saying is, there's a reason you don't feed bears. So they're trying to make it uncomfortable, and there was one guy whose stand was, we have to get rid of the drugs. When you get rid of the drugs, they'll leave with that.
No.
Yeah, that's like W.C. Fields talked about tying a hair ribbon on a bolt of lightning. That's what.
Well,
getting rid of the drugs.
We have I read in the paper, because we only get the paper 3 days a week now. They've been approved to build a site for like a homeless camp aid. Have you heard about it?
No, where is it going to be?
In Crescent City.
Crescent City?
And it's supposed to be like you start off here, you enter the site, and then they gradually work you into, whatever your needs are. If it's a mental issue or an addiction issue, they work that out into where you try to get you back on your feet, basically, which I found amazing. But until I see it, I'm not going to believe it.
Yeah.
We could do a whole. There's been several shows done on homeless in this station, but it's just hard for me, and probably everybody here who got up in the morning and goes to work every day and did what they could to get themselves qualified to have a job and all that. It's hard to understand people who haven't done that. Go ahead, Billy.
I have always advocated for a homeless community that it has an education arm to it, so that you can educate the people in the way of how they can better themselves from the beginning of their lives, from taking a bath to brushing their teeth to getting off of drugs to stop smoking, because you'd save a lot of money if you stopped smoking, and to have like a tiered format, so that ex-teachers like us, I'm a teacher, I'm a former teacher, I would love to teach a class on how to do an interview, for example, or how to reduce your stress, a stress management class, emotional intelligence class. These types of educational programs could easily be in a homeless shelter.
I think, though, a lot of the problem with the homeless here is mental illness.
I'm sure it is.
It's for some. I think it's different for every
That's
single
why I
person,
say,
really.
That's why I say a tiered entrance system.
A couple of years ago to interact with a homeless person, and I won't go into how it happened, but it wasn't the typical situation where you pass them on the street and don't even look at them. I had to interact with this person for a little while, and she was obviously somewhat sophisticated. She was blotto when I was talking to her. She was coming down, or she was just not 100% there. But you could tell by the way she carried herself and that she was not always living on the streets. And as I'm talking to her, as little as I could, I'm thinking, God, at one time she was somebody's pride and joy.
Yeah.
She was somebody who the mother took the ultrasound pictures and all that, and she was there for Christmas and holidays.
Yeah.
And now here she is on the streets.
You'd hope, but maybe she's not, because a lot of people are not.
Well, there's
like that.
There's a follow-up to it. It turns somebody who knew her, who said that her parents lived here and they were fairly well off, and she couldn't live with them just because of her or the way she was. And from what I heard, the last I heard, that the family has taken her back and she's gotten back on track now.
Yeah. Well, because you have to figure out what, especially with mental illness, what avenue you need to go down for, counseling and a lot of it's medication that they can't afford, or they don't have medication, to help the situation.
During my time as a state trooper in Alaska, I occasionally dealt with mentally ill people. I worked in rural areas, and sometimes there would be somebody, maybe we're 100 miles from Fairbanks, which is a tiny town to begin with, and there's somebody just walking along the street with their hood up in the middle of summer, and I'll engage them and somehow get them to some place where they could get some help. But most of them just didn't want to take the meds anymore or something like that.
Well, they have to want to get the help.
Huh?
They have to want to get the help. Because there are facilities in Crescent City, and I know here, that if you want the help, you can just go for it.
I think
I'm not sure there are facilities here in Brookings
No.
for a mentally ill.
from what I'm told is they were given the opportunity to go someplace. Is that right, Bob? They give them a bus ticket or something that they can go to.
I don't know about that. What I do know is there are two places where all sorts of what might be called good navigating or pointing people in the right direction. One is St. Tim's, and one is Brookings Core. And Brookings Core actually grew out of St. Tim's. During the early days of COVID, and I know this vividly because I lost my wife in those days, not to COVID, but
Sorry to hear that.
but this town during the early days of COVID basically shut down. The state closed the county health department because of incompetent leadership, I believe. I think the person in charge was a dental hygienist. And other things really shut down, but St. Tim's kept going. And when there used to be 7 churches, and they're now back to 7 churches that regularly feed, but only 2 of them kept feeding during COVID. I'm not judging them. It's just, what do you do when this new disease with high communicability is upon us? But what St. Tim's has is remarkable in that they have what they call an advocacy team. And if someone needs help getting sometimes just small things like gas or to help pay with a utility bill, or if they need to get onto a medical plan, these volunteers at the advocacy team 3 days a week, 3 hours in the morning, are there to help them get on health care plans, to help them find ways to get apartments and all that sort of thing. And Brookings Core does much of the same thing, and they opened up a big navigation center. You've probably seen it on 101.
I have a question about the people who maybe get funneled into Brookings Core. Do they have to also be funneled into St. Tim's?
No.
Because some of the people who are street people may have an objection to doing something with a religious organization.
Yeah.
So some kind of multi-systemic system needs to be. Is that what CORE does?
CORE, to a remarkable degree, relates to mental health groups, relates to the big health care plans that are available, and that's a totally secular organization.
Okay.
But I will say with St. Tim's, they do not proselytize in providing social services.
And that would
that's a big, clear understanding there. They're trying to share love and concern. They're not trying to convert them into
or make them something else.
Yeah.
Well, my brother-in-law actually works for New Dawn down in Crescent City, and he's amazing. Who works for the mentally handicapped, but severely, like schizophrenia, really outrageous mental issues, and he's amazing at it. So I know there's programs out there that you can get into if you just want the help.
Oregon is like 49th in the nation in those kind of mental health services.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Very, very down on the spectrum of things. Yeah.
And there are some people that do need to be in a quote mental institution. There are better euphemisms these days for it, and state of Oregon has very, very few beds for that.
The ironic thing too about that is that was a liberal decision to have to make it so that you could not lock somebody up just because they were mentally ill unless they were a threat to themselves or somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these people we're seeing here now would be in an institution, but this is America.
And I remember in the days in California when Reagan was governor, he shut down all the mental institutions.
Was it Reagan?
Yes, it was Reagan.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it was a liberal.
No, it was Reagan. He did it. I was living in California in those days.
There's another whole part of it, and I used to work in the legislature around those days. There was a well-intentioned liberal effort called the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act that was trying to build up community mental health services. And the whole intent of that was indeed to get fewer people out of, or more people out of institutions into places where family was nearby and all that. And anyway, that was passed by liberal legislators, but Reagan became governor and exploited that in a way of not funding the community services, but to having, it was a little like Trump, having some bad things to point out. Look at all these loonies running around on the streets now. And so
that's how he got away with it.
Yeah, that's how he got away.
Yeah. So that might be a good segue, although a little bit around the horn, but a good segue into what I wanted to be on a platform with my bullhorn today about Measure 118. There, I got several pieces of information in the mail that said no on Measure 118, and many of them were from liberal or more progressive areas. The measure basically says that there will be a tax levied on manufacturers and businesses that make over $25 million in Oregon, and that tax will then be redistributed and given to individuals who qualify. You can't be homeless to qualify for it. You have to have lived in Oregon for over 200 days to qualify. So I think the people who are against this measure, there's some on the left and some on the right, I think they're simply being misinformed. And I have looked through the booklet and I have made lots of notes about it. And I don't know if anyone here is going to vote for it, but I certainly am going to vote yes, even though many of these documents that I've received in the mail say no. They say that it will allow people to come into Oregon who are homeless and just automatically collect this check. It also says that schools will not be getting money anymore, which is absolutely false. That's gaslighting. It says right here in the booklet.
Eventually this money is going to affect the general fund? Money that goes into the general fund? That's one of the objections to it.
That is one of the objections to it. It will affect the general fund, yes. But it's also going to be allowing that money that goes into the general fund to be redistributed to qualifying individuals and to schools.
And to young mothers.
And to young mothers.
Are you talking about the $16 a month then, or are you talking about something else?
There's a 16...
a year, I'm sorry. And that's a ballpark number.
$1,600 a year is a bulk, is for everyone who qualify. Yeah. Not everyone is going to qualify.
Okay, so you're getting a new qualifying things that I've been able to find. But the qualifying thing I saw was you had to be here for 200 days.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you have to be here for 200 days.
And that's how you qualify? I don't get what's the point. Why would you?
You can't just...
So you can't just drive through on a weekend and pick up your check.
I mean, this is one of the objections to it. We'll have so many people moving in here that just because they want to collect this money. No, that will not happen.
Isn't there a reason for the money, though? What's the reason for the money?
The reason for the money is to help individuals who need a little extra help.
Kind of like a welfare situation.
Well, it's not limited to welfare. That. You can be a multimillionaire and still get that.
No.
When does that change? That's the last thing I read was that everyone gets it. Every man, woman, and child. Newborn baby. In Alaska, we have what they call a permanent fund, which is...
find it.
It's the interest on the fund that's built up by the oil companies. And every year, if you lived in the state for, I think you had to live there for a year, you got a piece of that fund. And that was divided up among the citizens. That if it was a good year on the stock market and the investments did well, you got sometimes, I believe it was, at least when I lived there, could run as high as $2,000, or it could be as little as $600. And that was the big argument there. We're going to have people move here just to get the permanent fund. I don't think somebody's going to move there just to get $1,000.
But that's kind of crazy. What about the prisoners? I mean, because they got $33 million of COVID money. and they're in prison.
The information I got is that prisoners in jail would get it too, because one of the objections I read from somebody was that the prisoners can have it and they can buy their hash pipes and do this and that. But
It just seems counterproductive.
I think
doesn't
that's,
seem-
but I think that's gaslighting. It does not say that prisoners will get this money, and
I think
does
it's in that book that I read that.
I think that's a bad faith scare tactic. I will try to find it.
Well, I haven't heard anything positive that's going to help. What's it going to do? You know, I was going to help these people just giving them a check. That's not going to help anything. I mean,
What do you mean? I mean, what if it will help families who need the money?
well, that's kind of like an assistance program, right?
It's
Is
not
it like a
welfare.
welfare?
It's not welfare.
You
It's
know that the need the money thing is one of the jokes in Alaska always was when permanent fund is coming up that all the trailer parks are going to fill up with new snow machines now. But maybe they needed the money, but they were pissing it away anyway, which is another thing entirely. I
What is
guess.
the
But
need? You know, this need.
Doesn't
Everybody need.
and then now Billy has something different on this than I got. That if you are like borderline food stamps and this 1,600 puts you over, you lose your food stamps
No,
or whatever benefits you were getting.
No, that is absolutely false.
Okay.
You will not lose. This is one of the things that I have discovered in
Now
this booklet.
there's a proposal that it not do that, and there's also a proposal that it not be federally taxed. But the information I got is that that's not likely to actually happen. It sounds to me like taking money from one pot and putting it in another is going to do something.
The one pot has to do with welfare for corporations, and the other has to do with welfare for people who may or may not be struggling.
Yeah.
But I'd rather that the welfare go to the people than the really extremely rich corporations.
Yeah.
It's not going. That's the whole thing. They're taking it away from the extremely rich
The
corporations.
welfare they get in so many ways, in federal taxes and so forth, that I'd rather see people, even if they don't all spend it right, have the money.
I think we're saying the same thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's not communism and welfare. I mean, one of the people that wrote in this booklet said, "This is a communist tactic. It's socialism. It's welfare." It is. I don't believe that.
I think a lot of these people don't know what communism and
Oh
socialism.
no. Yeah. I think that's true,
when
too.
Trump starts ranting about they're communists, they're fascists, they're all these different things. Why is he saying that? Where's he getting that from?
Right.
Because it's a catchphrase.
Yeah.
I still don't really understand it. That's kind of.
Well, I'd be happy to lend you my booklet, and you can read my notes in here.
People
There
who live
are-
here don't want to read it, Troy. I don't think.
Well,
There-
and then a lot, like the propositions, I read all my booklet for the propositions, and they purposely make it complicated.
Yes, they do.
So other people will be like, they can't mentally sustain the information.
And
So
you're
they just like, I'm not going to vote, forget it,
Or you'll go with what your party says you should do. Like we have this little card with suggestions. And they have no opinion on this one.
It's great. That's what I said.
I absolutely agree. This is exactly why they make these things sound so difficult. It's what they do in Washington, too. What the fellow that was here last week or the week before or whatever was so upset when I brought up the fact that there was a bilateral legislation that went out for reform at the border, for immigration reform. And he said, yeah, but it just had all these other things in it that dragged it down. Yes, this is Washington. This pork barrel things that are always attached to these
tag on
bills. They're
things, yeah.
tagged onto the bills. That's exactly what happened.
How is it
And
that
that's
we-
what they're doing to us here, too.
How do we keep that situation?
You
Why
know,
can't we get rid of it?
because that's the legislative bureaucracy that's paper heavy. It's always been paper heavy. That's what it is. And if you can come up with a system to make it one page instead of
Why
75,000,
don't we have a situation where if you put in a bill to make it illegal to kill frogs,
Right.
and then you tag onto that bill it's okay to do this or it's not okay. Things that have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do about it.
Well, that's just the way the system has always been.
That's not a reason.
No, I know that's
Well,
not
right.
a reason.
That's just
Well, in the particular case that you were talking about, that legislation was not killed because of details. It was killed because Donald Trump.
Yes.
oh yeah, exactly.
And that was my point.
yeah.
That was my point to this fellow, that Donald Trump called up all of his Republican people and said, "You will kill that bill because I want that problem when I get into office."
Strong conservative Republican
But-
main sponsor.
When
Yeah,
we had a
absolutely.
conservative here 2 weeks ago, he said the same thing you did, that there was a lot of money involved, that he was,
Oh please.
yeah.
Has anybody lost the fact that he's a convicted felon? What are the? We have no standards.
Oh, they're not really felonies. They were just little business things that everybody does.
No, not everybody.
Yeah.
It's
Well, we're talking to the choir here.
it just,
And that he's indicted for several more.
and then he's selling these Bibles and his shoes, and it's just all this.
The
stuff
Bibles, by the way, are printed in China.
well,
Yeah.
of course.
And
They
his
say
coins and-
the thing is, he doesn't know that because the label that says printed in China is on the inside.
He's
would have
never
had to
opened a
open
Bible.
Open it, yeah.
Well-
it's such a double standard. He can do all these things, and then they turn to the Democrats and say, I mean, can you imagine if Kamala was selling, bras or whatever,
Trading cards.
trading cards
Trading
or
cards.
coins of, but all that money's going to her personally. Like all that money's going to him personally,
Yeah.
It is. That's
this is-
right? So
That's
how
not.
is
That's
that
not.
right?
A lot of people probably think it's a donation to the campaign.
I don't see how is he able to get away with all this stuff and nobody's stopping him. Nobody.
Because it's legal.
Sort
It's
of.
legal to do it. It's just something that most people have enough decency that they wouldn't have done something like that.
And I'm doing my
It's
part.
legal to lie.
I'm doing my part. I'm going to turn in my ballot today. I'm going to put my ballot right in the ballot box today.
Is the box out
Yes.
yet?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
it,
it's
I
just-
think it might.
mine was in the mail yesterday.
Okay, but
Yeah.
the box I think is only out in a day or two.
Oh, really?
oh, well, then I'll put it in when it's open
Or
up.
you can put it. You can mail it, but you have to.
I don't want to mail it. I want to
Don't
drop
mail
it in the
no.
box.
You know what
No,
happens
don't
to the
mail it.
mail? Those mail bags get found in a river someplace.
Yep.
500 ballots in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd like to talk on the national scene in kind of sweeping terms. When I was a young man, I was involved in a lot of civil rights stuff and the anti-Vietnam stuff and that. And I had the basic assumption that on race, when the laws broadened rights to everyone, and when people of different ethnicities and races got to know each other and went to school together and worked together, that things would slowly evolve to be better.
Yeah.
And in '63, when the March on Washington happened and I was part of it, there was that same kind of optimism that things would get better. And then a month or two later, the bombings in the Birmingham church happened.
Yeah.
And the same thing that, when Barack Obama became president, there was this, a lot of talk, especially on the right, of a racially free country and all that. And who could have imagined what was going on in Virginia and all that? It's like it's worse. And what especially makes it worse is all the social media out there.
Yep.
That is so uncontrollable as to what's truth and what's lies and what people are likely to believe and all of that. So anyway, the optimism, I thought that eventually things would get better, I don't feel, unless there's an overwhelming victory.
Well, these
I had
storms-
that same optimism when I was like 20s or something, and things started to. So, well, now all we got to do is get rid of all these old people who have these old ideas.
Yeah.
I had the same optimism when I marched across the San Francisco Bay Bridge in 1968, marched against the Vietnam War.
Right.
And I had that optimism, and now,
Everybody's I want to speak on these. We're having these storms that just happened. That just
oh boy,
cleared through these states, and just the devastation is horrible. It just really horrible.
it's our consciousness.
And
that's
people have
doing it.
lost everything. And at times like this is when we turn to each other and help each other unconditionally. We don't ask what your what your religion is. We don't ask any of those questions. You're hungry, we'll feed you.
We're supposed to.
That's what I see happening. Right? I just wish we could live in that state of mind, like after 9/11 and all these things.
I do too.
We're all here on the same plateau, but it's other people that try to segregate us and make us different, better than these people are better than these people, these people are better than these people, and it's just getting. When does it come to a head? And I think this particular arc is that's what's happening. The minority is turning into the majority, and that's where the hitch is. There's toothpaste has already left the tube, people. We're not going back, and they keep trying to, women's rights, LGBT rights, all these rights are trying to push way back into the 50s or whatever, but it's impossible.
But the pendulum swings. I believe it'll swing back toward rational thinking.
Now,
I really do. Someday.
Well, it sure doesn't look like it, though. Looks like
right now, unfortunately, there's still the Electoral College built into the system.
Oh,
there's still
that's
gross
right.
changes in representation in the Congress. A senator from Montana has as much fewer constituents than a senator from California.
Because they're allowed to get away with it.
Well, it's because there's 2 senators per state.
But the other big thing is the current Supreme Court is such an extraordinarily negative force.
Yeah.
And unless the court is increased in size or something different.
And they have no consequence at all, which is ridiculous.
They have no enforceable ethics.
Consequence.
They have no ethics.
And they, many of them were appointed by presidents who were not elected by a majority of the popular vote, and also that they were. There was a case of the one seat actually being stolen by Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell, yeah.
But the Supreme Court's a huge problem for quite a while, even if we have big Democratic victory.
Is Thomas the oldest one? Is he the next one to go?
Alito. Isn't Alito the oldest?
Oh, I don't know.
I think Alito, and then Thomas.
Thomas preceded his appointment.
But we could have a whole show on the Supreme Court. We could have a whole show on the Electoral College. We could have a whole show on almost any one of the Congress and representation.
All this stuff was put together by very smart people who had all these idealistic views on how things would go.
They have manipulation is what they had in their mind to manipulate people.
There were.
Not originally, I don't.
Well, not originally, but that's what it's turned into.
Originally, there were big compromises made between the North and the South.
Right.
Including such things as counting a black person as 3/4 of a human being.
Yes.
3/4.
And that, anyway, many, and the quote, founding fathers were people who were white male property owners, and that excluded much of the people of the population. It excluded Indians, it excluded black people, it excluded just all sorts of folk from having any, and women, any say in how decisions were made.
Yeah.
So to think they were idealistic types who didn't quite figure it out well is...
Wasn't this land the land that they stole?
Sure, of course.
So they turn around and say, I'm better then because I've got this land. No, you took that land. It was not given to you. You killed the people who lived on it. That's how that worked.
And the wealth of Europe and the wealth of the United States and Canada to a lesser degree was tied up with the whole trade that went between Africa and the Caribbean and the United States and England, and it had to do with sugar, it had to do with cotton, and it had to do with human beings.
Yep.
And none of those countries would have always been as rich as they were if they hadn't exploited the whole rest of the world so much.
And wouldn't it be wonderful if all of this were taught to our children in schools instead of having people in the Republican Party who want children not to learn this very history.
They don't
But
even
we're,
want to learn.
we're wasting our time teaching kids how to become trans.
Oh, please. They wouldn't even teach them about the Holocaust. And my family were part of the Holocaust, and it just makes me sick. And we just had an anniversary date of the Pink Triangle, because anybody that was deemed homosexual or anything, even if they just walked with a switch or whatever they thought, I mean, they killed millions of them, and that's where our Pink Triangle comes from, the LGBT. And
That still happens in
they
Russia.
let that yeah.
Yes,
in a lot of
places.
countries, yeah. It just baffles my mind that how is like at all okay in any regard, in just as a human. It isn't.
No, it isn't. And if we could just wave a magic wand over the people who have been deluded, it would be
Trumpsters, yeah.
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
that'll acknowledge like a person like, let's say Sally. She's a mean person. Well, that's just how Sally is,
Billy.
or Billy,
Or Billy, thank you.
not Billy. But you know what I'm saying? It's like that's just how
Well,
she is.
you only
instead
just
of-
met her and you got her figured out that quickly. You were pretty
I know, good, right? But if that's how you let them treat you, and that's how you let them be, then
you're
that's
handing me
what they're going to exploit. Don't you think?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think shouldn't we treat each other as though as we would like to be treated? Shouldn't we put the golden rule back into practice?
One would hope.
One would hope.
That would be nice.
Yeah. And the next generation.
It only
will do
happens
it.
when you need something. When these people need something from you, is when they're nice or whatever. That's
We're
Even
down to
then,
about
they're
4
not-
minutes.
well,
I,
yeah,
4 minutes.
I've been so
now that I'm nauseous. This is just
I've,
ridiculous.
I've been so wrapped up in this, I didn't do a station ID or anything. Anyway,
Ugh.
it's a little late now, but you're listening to Curry Cafe on KCRW Radio 107 on your dial. And we're down to just a couple of minutes, so if
Sorry,
everybody,
we're getting
anybody's
calls.
got something they want to say to close this out.
100.7 on your FM dial right here in beautiful downtown Brookings, where almost every day is a perfect day, and we can always say, yes, it's good to be alive.
And if you want to be on this show, get a hold of us, kcrw.org, or if you want to do anything else in a volunteer fashion for a radio station.
Sorry, we didn't
Same
have
thing.
a phone for the people.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
that
normally
was-
have a text line here, but for some reason we
have it
don't
next week.
You can always contribute money, and let's help build a tower.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, we need that plug in the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
Plug for the tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about a tower,
Oh,
but I'm from Crescent City.
Oh, well, we need to get a new tower.
yeah, and it would no longer be low power; it'd be full power FM.
And you could actually listen to us in Crescent
that kind of
City.
tower. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, right now we kind of sneak into Crescent City a little bit. I drive there. It depends on which car I'm driving. Some I get it and some I lose it.
Yeah, it'd be nice if the signal was harder. But they can always hear us on YouTube, which is great.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I tell people to go.
You can also get the podcast at www.kciw.org/curry-cafe.
And if you want to do a program,
Well, I'm doing
Get-
one, yes.
get in touch with us the same place.
After the first of the year, we're going to put mine into works.
Good. That's excellent. Oh, can't
It's
wait.
called, it's been called Share the Joy with Troy.
Oh, good.
CHER. Hello. And just positivity from the LGBTQ community, just uplifting wonderful things that people are doing. Instead of all this negativity and hate.
Excellent.
we've
We
been
need
through.
that.
That's
we
why-
need that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get this election over with. Oh, a minute.
Okay, we're down to a minute.
Well,
And
thank
we
you
always
all.
have a little trouble kind of filling this last minute. sometimes.
No,
Well-
we want to thank our listeners and
Yes, thank you for listening.
thank our other people.
And thank you, everybody, for coming. Yes.
Right.
It's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
And
It
to our
has,
production
yes.
people as well.
Please text
Thanks,
in
Tom.
your questions on the podcast. You can write them in the comments at the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, right there we have we've been saved by the bumper music. You know, when you have a show like this that's
California
free
do you
form,
live?
and you're down to just a few seconds left, everybody's
part of
looking at each other saying, what do we want to say? But that's it. Thanks for listening.
Join us next week.
Absolutely.